Hey boys, we're back in action tomorrow. Chelsea versus Sunderland at 3 p.m, right? So not an early kickoff, that's a big positive for us. And I've just had to record this again because I was speaking for 5 minutes and I didn't even realise I hadn't clicked start recording. So there you go. I'm gonna have to say exactly what I just said before, but it's okay. We move right straight into Sunderland, right? Should be a fairly easy game, but before we go into match selection, who I think will start, etc., we have got some, news to cover as well. So Reggie Walsh signs his first pro contract at Chelsea after becoming the youngest debutant in Champions League history for Chelsea, right? So this is huge news. I think everyone sort of suspected and knew he was gonna, sign his professional contract with Chelsea. It's been in the works for a couple of weeks now. I don't think anyone was panicking that he's looking abroad or he's looking at maybe rival clubs. Similar to what happened with Rio. We couldn't tie him down. He didn't see a pathway into the team. He decided to leave to join Liverpool. Don't quite see how he gets a pathway at the Liverpool team, to be honest. He's been sat on the bench as well. And to be honest, our left wing spot is kind of open. So it just shows me, some players don't want to wait for their turn. But, Reggie Walsh, this guy's a class act. And I think Maresca trusts him. I think everyone, the Chelsea hierarchy and, the team, they see him as a big talent. He's got a great pathway into the team as well. I think Maresca probably sees him as an attacking sort of 10 player, probably not as an 8. Maybe the Enzo Fernandez role where he starts as an 8 and then in possession progresses into a 10. Maybe something like that. But, for the game against Ajax, he was one of the furthest forward, almost playing like a shadow striker. So it'd be interesting to see how we're going to utilise him in the next couple of years. Huge talent on our hands. We've tied him down, and I think this guy's pure Chelsea anyway. It didn't look like he was going to move or force a way out. And hopefully we can give him some more games this season, and then maybe he'll go on loan to Strasbourg next year when he's turning 18. Because he's only just turned 17, so he's so young, but a huge future ahead of him. Definitely one to watch. Covered him in my video in the top 5 Obam talents that are going to break through this season, and Reggie Walsh is one of the top ones, no doubt. And the fact that Maresca really trusts him, he's always got his arm around him, right? He's almost like his son. So, I'm big faith in Maresca to develop him. He's training with the first team loads, onwards and upwards for Reggie Walsh. So huge news. We've tied him down, but I don't think anyone expected him to leave anyway. But it's important that we've kept him. We've also got here as well, so with the press conference earlier, just a few of the comments Maresca made, right? So is Mark Guay now ready to start? Absolutely, yes. And then this moves on to the next point as well, right? We had a chat with Mark Guay 2 weeks ago, and I told him I didn't like the way he trained and needed to change. He changed. I really like to see this as well. Maresca being transparent, talking to the press and letting us know what's going on behind the scenes. As fans and in the media, a lot of speculation happens. And when Guay wasn't even featuring at all, or not even the fact he wasn't starting, but not even getting 5-minute cameos off the bench. People were suggesting, is this because we've recalled him on loan, but you can't play for 3 clubs in a single season, right? So we're going to recall him, and then we're going to ship him off to Strasbourg in January, and Muega comes here. That was a big talking point. A lot of people were talking about it, and it just goes to show, that wasn't what was happening. Maresca clearly needed to see more in training. Perhaps it was either something tactically or I think Mark Guay does put a shift in, so I couldn't see him not trying in training. I think it was more asking him what he wants him to perform in game, and it wasn't the case of we're not going to play him at all and we're just going to ship him off to Strasbourg. And it was the same with Palmer, right? When Palmer was spotted in Dubai, everyone was saying, oh, he's seeing a specialist for his groin surgery, right? And it just goes to show a load of waffle. He doesn't need surgery. He's not seeing a specialist. He was just out there for a couple of weeks on holiday, Like, he's injured. He's allowed to be away from London. So it just shows people love to speculate, everyone in the media, online, or on X or whatever it is, right? People are going to talk. So I like that Moeska came out. And if you can be more transparent like this, it's just going to help everyone, because we don't need the gossip and, people just making up stuff and going along with it. So Guay isn't joining Strasbourg. He's playing for Chelsea. We recalled him to play for Chelsea. So at least this has sort of settled things as well. And then obviously moving on to the next point as well. Enzo Maresca says Liam Delap could be available for the next game. He took part in the session yesterday. Now, I don't believe, he will play in the next game. Now, the next game is the Carabao Cup, Wolves, right? So I think that's Wednesday. So he'll probably be on the bench for that. He'll be training for sure. But I think we need to prime him and get him ready for the Spurs game. I would definitely like him to start against Spurs. I think if we've got a really strong 11 going into that game, Under Thomas Frank, they haven't looked totally convincing yet, right? And I think we really can get 3 points. So I think let's hold back on Delap. Yes, it would be nice for him to maybe get a cameo or play in the Carabao Cup, but I think let's play it safe. Let's keep him rested a little bit. Maybe build a bit of match sharpness, but let's get him primed and ready for the Spurs game because that's a game we really need to go out there and win. And if we can, the run we've got going forward as well, we can put some serious numbers behind us. And then this is from 2 days ago now, but I thought it's worth covering just as rationale for my team selection as well and how I think we'll line up against Sunderland. So I had Cole at Manchester City when he was Estevao's age. Cole started out wide, then he built some physicality. Estevao is playing wide now, but in the future, I think he's more of an inside player, so it's quite interesting, right? And then also, at the end of the game, we put Estevao in the middle. We wanted to limit his run-in because we have another game in 48 hours. Now, I'm using this as justification for how I've lined up my team for Sunderland, right? If it was up to me, Estevao would start, but I just, on the back end of these comments, I just don't see him starting. I think he'll start in the Carabao Cup, and then potentially, we'll move on to the Spurs game or the next Champions League game, and he'll start those. But I think because he played a full 90, and Maresca didn't sub him off, I think if he subbed Estevao off, that was maybe, he's thinking ahead, and he wants him to play against Sunderland, but again, I think he's going to probably use him as a super sub, manage his minutes because he is 18 and he doesn't want to make him injury prone, right? So it's understandable. I get them managing minutes, but the whole of Stamford Bridge, everyone loves Estevao, right? So we just want to see him play as much as possible. So it makes sense, especially as a fan. We want Estevao to start, but when you look at it from Maresca's lens, we've got to protect the player a bit. And I think Maresca, he's a big believer in this. We saw it with Reece James last season, and we're seeing it with some other players now. Let's manage the minutes. We don't want anyone getting injured, right? So, moving on to tomorrow, Chelsea Sunderland, 3 p.m. Thank God, we don't have another early kickoff. If it was another early kickoff, maybe I'd be like, you know what, this is a 1-1 draw written all over it. But, I got quite good faith. Bookies odds were quite big favourites. I think when you look at Sunderland's team as well, Diarra's injured, big player for them. Everyone, we know him from Strasbourg. But the main point with Sunderland, right, is their midfield. I think Xhaka has been one of the signings of the season. He's been, phenomenal. I've always rated him as well. And when he went to Leverkusen, he was really good. I've always liked him, sort of like that deep line playmaker. He's just a top midfielder. But because, they do have one of their midfielders missing, and I think they're not going to outbattle them and beat us in the midfield sector. And that's normally how Sunderland have won their games, right? If they can win the midfield, in general, Sunderland go on to win the game. And we can look at Sunderland's, their fixtures this season, right? So they beat Wolves. They're coming off, that's the most recent game. Wolves are dead last. Everyone's kind of got them going down as well, right? So it's a game they should be winning. Man United away, Old Trafford, that is a tough game. It's a place we couldn't go and get anything from, right? So I don't think anyone would, expect Sunderland to go out there and get anything. They beat Forest, but again, this is Ange's Forest. It was basically 3 points, as we saw as well. But these two draws were definitely impressive. Aston Villa, okay, Villa a couple of weeks ago weren't quite in the best form, but still, Palace as well were in great form here, and they got 2 draws from here. But what you'll see is they don't concede many goals. So I don't think we're going to go out here and we're going to absolutely blow them out the water and win 4-0, something like that. Like what we did to Ajax. Don't see that happening. Yes, they lost to Burnley here. But I think they've kind of won the games they probably should be winning, especially when you look at their squad compared to some of the other, teams that are sort of battling to fight against relegation. But for me, I had Sunderland sort of 15th, 13th in my prediction going into the season because I thought some of their signings I'm a big fan of. And look, I think their midfield is top, right? So I don't think any Sunderland fan or anyone who's watched them this season is really thinking they'll go down. But, in these big games, especially Chelsea at home, I don't think they're going to cause as much problem, especially because we can probably control and dictate the midfield, and I suspect we will do that as well. So moving on, this is the team I've gone with for the game for tomorrow, how we'll line up, right? So Sanchez in goals, Reece James at right back. Gusto is suspended, so we won't see him feature. And it'll probably be Reece James playing the full 90. I've gone with a Championn and Chalobah as my centre-back partnership. Now, do I quite like Chalobah and a Championn together? Not quite. Maybe we could go with Tosin. the physicality. It'll be useful if they got any offensive corners or free kicks, dead ball situations, right? But look, he came off a poor game at Ajax. He got hooked, gave away a penalty. He just didn't look at it, right? He looked quite slow. So, for me, I wouldn't start him on the back of that. Could we go Fofana? Potentially. But I don't know. We kind of have to manage Fofana's minutes as well, right? We saw at the end of the Ajax game, he sort of, I don't know what it was, pointing towards his shin or his calf. Again, he's a player we got to manage minutes. It'd be nice for him to play full 90s all the time, but again, he's going to pick up injuries. He's made of glass. So I'd go with Chalobah. Chalobah hasn't been great recently, but again, maybe we go Joel Hatto. But then if you go Hatto and a Championne, that's quite a young partnership, especially at centre back. So I think this is what we'll line up with. Maybe it's Tosin, but I've gone with Chalobah purely off the Ajax game, right? Cucurella at left back, it's obviously going to be him. And I think because they're going to have a low block, it's going to be tricky to break them down. We'll basically look like this in possession, right? Enzo's going to play that double 10. Cucurella's going to be bombing forward as well. And then it'll be up to Caicedo to sort of sweep up and clear the sort of counter attacks. But they're going to sit deep. We're going to dominate a lot of the possession. I think the first half will probably be quite tight. We might even go maybe 0-0, 1-0. We're not going to blow them away. But when you look at our bench as well, the players we can bring off and really change it up if we need to, I think this is going to be the difference maker. And we will go on to win the game, right? So I've gone with Caicedo and Enzo as my pivot, and obviously Enzo getting more involved into the final third. Lavia definitely had a good game against Ajax, but I think, this is our strongest midfield. So, it is what it is. I suspect as well, they're probably going to start in the Carabao Cup game as well. So, this is what I would go for. Enzo, again, you'll have a good performance. He's been in good form recently. I thought his start of the season was really poor. He wasn't good at all, but recently, the last 5 games or so, he's been really top. So, you shut me up there. Obviously, Cucurella inverting into midfield, getting more involved in the final third as well. I think, personally, I'd sort of go like this, and then Estevao. This is how I would like to line up, but off the comments Maresca made, I think he's going to manage Estevao's minutes, especially because he played for Brazil, a lot of travelling. And I think with the Carabao Cup game and other games coming up, he's going to probably get a 30-minute cameo off the bench. I would like to line up like this. Or you could even maybe go Gittins, but, I do suspect it'll be Neto on the right. And it could be Garnacho on the left as well. Look, he's going to try and balance the squad. If someone didn't play, maybe he's going to give them some minutes. But I think Gittins coming off a man of the match performance, official. I mean, I gave it to Estevao, but officially, Gittins got man of the match, right? I think he's going to, use that and start him. Garnacho could start, but I think if he's in good form, let's get him playing, right? It makes sense. Neto will be on the right, and we need a good performance from him as well. But if not, look, Estevao's ready to come off that bench. And I think, look, tired legs as well. Maybe Garnacho, Estevao coming on, quick, well, I wouldn't say Garnacho has the best dribbling. Estevao certainly does. Look, it's going to be, a long day for the fullbacks of Sunderland, right? So João Pedro's back. He obviously used up his suspension in the Champions League, so he's fully rested. He's due a goal as well. I need him in my fantasy to get a goal for me. So I think João Pedro will probably score. Obviously Enzo Fernandez as the double 10. Gittins at left wing, and then Gueye at striker. So is Delap going to be on the bench? Maybe. I don't think he'll feature at all, though. So he might be there, but I don't think he'll play, not even for 10 minutes. The Carabao Cup game, we could see him feature. But again, let's save him for the Spurs game. Again, this team is more than capable of going out there and pitting, a goal or two past Sunderland. I'd like us to keep a clean sheet, though. Look, we should have kept a clean sheet against Ajax. Ajax did absolutely nothing to us the whole game, but we gave them a penalty. So I'd like to be the same here. Let's not give them a silly penalty. Let's play switched on, and I think we'll get the job done. So, all in all, I don't think this is going to be the most difficult game for us, to be honest. I'm going to be in London tomorrow, so, I'll try and do my match reaction straight afterwards. There might be a couple hours delayed. But for me, I'm going 2-0 Chelsea. I don't think we're going to blow them out the water, score loads of goals. But again, I just think we're going to win that midfield battle, dominate possession. They're going to sit deep, try and hit us on the counter, but we're going to nullify it. And maybe they get a goal from a set piece, penalty, something like that. But, you know, are they going to play through the middle and carve us open? I don't see it happening. So I'm going 2-0 Chelsea. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who's going to win? What's the scoreline going to be? All that good stuff. And then I'll see you boys tomorrow after the game. And hopefully we got the 3 points. So up the Chelsea. I'll see you then. Peace.